This video is made possible thanks to the generous support of Rapisarda Pianos and the Martín Chirino Foundation for Art and Thought. The Martín Chirino Foundation for Art and Thought opened its doors on March 28, 2015 at the emblematic Castillo de la Luz in Las Palmas de Gran Canaria. The building, which marks the beginnings of the city following the colonization of the island, is linked to the sculptor's own personal history. This cultural institution was founded in order to raise awareness of Chirino's artistic career and at the same time, provide an active center for intellectual activity, one that is open to reflection and debate. The Castillo de la Luz is the oldest defensive fortress on the Canary Islands. At the end of the 15th century, the fortress' original structure consisted of a medieval-style square-shaped enclosure of 3 floors in height. One peculiar feature of the fortress is the manner in which it was completed in 3 phases. The initial development centered around what is known as the Fajardo Tower, which was complemented by an artillery barrier in 1547 and, finally, an outer wall in 1563. Martín Chirino was born in Las Palmas de Gran Canaria in 1925. He grew up next to the sea in a traditional family setting with close links to the shipyards of Puerto de la Luz. This knowledge, from a very young age, equipped him to work with tools and introduced him to a world that filled him with wonder and a passion for artisan ironwork and wood carving. Chirino uses iron like a conductive metal in his art, seeking maximum expressive potential with minimal materials. The motivation behind his sculptures, which are mostly large in scale, is twofold. On the one hand, a dialogue with the primitive art, materials, and native landscape of the Canary Islands, seen through the lens of imaginative evocation and the memories of that adolescent artist who dreamed of moving the horizon of his childhood beach. Nobody has sculpted the spiral like Chirino, and nobody has thought and described it like him. It is the beginning and the end, forwards and backwards are the same. It is the beginning of life and its ellipsis. It is what unites everything I have created. If I didn't get to know that I had to define many things clearly, I was never going to be the sculptor that I had to be. With his herramientas, Chirino takes the plunge to the most absolute abstract, while he pays tribute to the craft work he so admires and from which he learned so much at the same time. The influence of his much-admired Julio Gonzalez can be glimpsed in these works on ground level, as they are simple, with an aesthetic quality in line with the ruptures caused by the avant-garde of post-war. The title the sculptor gave to these works is beautiful and poetic and refers unfailingly to the earth as a root of all his thoughts, at the same time as it rises up towards literature with the counter-positioning of the 2 elements of functionality and the useless. It is an indication, in both the title and the work, of the commitments that the informalist creators had taken on in the 1950s. Very few literary works have inspired such a wealth of artist expression as Don Quixote. Since it was first published, there have been countless illustrated editions of the novel and a host of sculptures, drawings and paintings that have brought to life in our collective imagination the character and adventures of Don Quixote and Sancho. Over the years, awareness grew of the timeless modernity of this novel of novels, and more artists looked to it for inspiration. In the end, it came to penetrate the theoretically impenetrable borders of 20th century avant-garde art, one of the founding premises of which was to abandon all trace of the narrative figure. Chirino took the opportunity to create a modern reproduction of the iconography that has accompanied Don Quixote throughout his journey, one of the most powerful cultural legends of Spanish culture. He drew inspiration from one of the interpretations of the wind, Los Solanos, combined with the teachings of Julio Gonzalez to create a piece with a heavy center, but which becomes so light that it appears to levitate in the air. At the beginning of the 80s, Chirino also produced some other unique pieces on a large scale, which did not correspond to any of his previous typologies. The spiral now grows above itself, from the ground, forming near-perfect circles that close slightly at each turn. In this way, he creates a structure whose top closes in on itself, rather like a dome. Etching is an especially gratifying technique for sculptors, given that drawing, which produces the original composition of the forms in question, is complemented by relief work on the metal plate with which the form is imprinted. Inspired by the myth of Sisyphus, symbol of the philosophy of the absurd, as a metaphor of the useless and incessant endeavors of man, Martín Chirino entered the world of precious metalwork in order to create a spiral made out of gold-plated silver, replete with 19 embedded tourmalines and featuring a deliberate handcrafted appeal. The spiral is a common denominator throughout practically all of Chirino's work, the result of the research he carried out into his ancestral culture. It is interesting to observe how Martín Chirino never actually uses the human body in his production, but he does so with heads. Pieces such as Santa Teresa are a reflection of modern and contemporary art, and are about those sculptors that Chirino had sacralized during his career, artists including Julio Gonzalez, Juan Gris, and Brancusi, names that cannot be ignored due to the importance of the sublime beauty of their whole work. The tribute to Marinetti, the founder of Futurism, emerges from a subject that Chirino was passionate about and that he has not ceased to fine-tune, widening the challenge that aspires to transform space. A spiral opens up with fascinating elegance, a delicate line, almost like a handmade rubric. All craftsmen and sculptors establish an intimate relationship with their work tools, and indeed they become an extension of their hands. But Chirino also had other, more virtual tools. Like all good artists, he needed to have, or rather, needed to create a grounding, and Picasso and his work El Guernica didn't go unnoticed by him. The piano piece you are about to hear is titled La Espiral del Viento. It was written as a tribute to Martín Chirino, shortly after his death in 2019. It belongs to Book 4 of my Metaludios for piano. A substantial part of the melodic and rhythmic motives in the piece were drawn from Martín Chirino's own voice, reciting one of his most emblematic phrases.
No pretendo combatir nada, pero me urge con violencia irresistible definirme enfrente como algo distinto.
And from the hammering sounds while forging the iron. These sounds were processed electronically and incorporated into the musical discourse of the piece. It also employs inside the piano extended techniques as well as note patterns that evoke the circling structure of spirals.
Thanks for watching. Virtual Reality Piano is a self-funded project. Please support it by subscribing to this channel.